Welcome to today's video, which completes my 3-part introduction to PR Racing's newest 2-wheel drive buggy, the B10R. If you are interested, you can check out my unboxing video to get an idea of all the parts and options that are included in the kit. And you can also view my build review where I talk about my experience putting the car together and also share some tips you should find useful if you are assembling a B10R of your own. In this third video, I will take the car to the track and put it through its paces, and as we view the track footage, I will share some of my impressions about the car's performance. But before we get to the track footage, let me just quickly take you through what is on my car. In terms of gear, my car is running a Sanwa PGS CL2 servo, which is a nice budget performance servo with a response speed of 0.11 seconds and 14.7 kilograms of torque at 6 volts. Power is provided by a 6600 mAh shorty LiPo battery from Kaoneng, and all that current is managed by a Hobbywing XR10 G2 ESC that drives a Surpass Rocket V3 8.5 ton motor. I'm also running a 30mm fan from Surpass Hobby. Setup wise, the car is almost fully stock. I do have an optional aluminum servo horn from PR Racing on the steering servo though. The shocks are running the stock 2x1 8-hole pistons and green springs both front and rear, filled with TLR 35 weight oil all round. I've currently got 10k oil in the differential. I actually started with 5k and then went up to 7k, but where I run, there are some tight corners that head straight into jumps, and my preference is for heavier oil so that the car can square up more confidently out of the corner to launch off the jumps without getting out of shape. On the rear wing, I've actually cut down the gurney. I found the stock PR cut lines do provide a good amount of downforce, but on a higher grip surface like Astro, it isn't always needed. On the contrary, too much gurney can make it hard to bring the buggy's nose down off the bigger jumps. The rear wing actually has a huge effect on how your car jumps. I trimmed down the gurney as needed to adjust how the car reacts in the air. For tires, I'm running Schumacher Mezzo yellow compound tires in the rear. These tires are a godsend for hobbyists like me who are looking for a long-wearing tire that still delivers good grip on AstroTurf tracks like mine. They may lack a little side bite compared to some other tires, but they deliver very decent overall performance, and their amazing longevity makes them my rear tire of choice. I run these tires with closed cell foams but have punched holes around the foam to actually soften them up for better grip. The front tires are Schumacher low profile cut staggers, but I've glued the tires to eliminate the little gap in the sidewall that is part of the tire's design. Running the tire without gluing it this way is actually quite okay, and most of the guys I run with do just that. But I have found that gluing down the sidewalls this way reduces tire flex and makes the steering feel more direct and connected. Initially when I tried this, the car felt harder to drive because of the quicker response. But after getting used to it, I found that the more positive steering was key to shaving down lap times, especially on a small, tight track like where I run. If you're looking for just that little more steering response from your cut staggers, this may be something you can try. But be warned that getting the sidewalls glued down can be quite a pain to do properly, and I actually ended up 3D printing a jig to squeeze the tire onto the wheel just so I could do this more easily and consistently. Okay, with that said, let's get this car to the track. Those who've watched my previous videos will have seen this track before. It is an outdoor AstroTurf track that is built and maintained by a small community of local hobbyists. Recent changes to the track include the series of little bumps just after the tight hairpin in front of the driver's area and the chicane on the right just after these bumps. Although AstroTurf as a racing surface typically provides quite consistent grip, we've found that recent grip levels seem to have dropped off a bit, possibly due to the weather where we've had quite frequent and heavy rain recently that might have deposited a little bit more dust on the surface. or perhaps it's just been the wearing down of the AstroTurf over time. The series of bumps slows down the cars, and because the profile is not uniform, buggies risk getting unsettled if they hit them with too much speed. The line most everyone will take is to hop the slight slope after the hairpin and then navigate the bumps through a series of hops. But as you can see, I prefer to launch the B10R over the slight slope to clear the next two bumps, leaving me with just two more to clear before the chicane. In my opinion, this is the faster way to clear this entire section, but it is more challenging to get the jump right and land properly on a consistent basis. You can see that the PR takes this approach almost throughout this entire run. And it is able to do this quite consistently because the car's suspension and shock package work very well. This line actually requires a car that lands confidently without getting unsettled, and also a suspension that can skim over the small bumps without being thrown out of shape. The drive of the B10R felt very planted, so I was able to tackle this section of the track with great confidence. One area that the car felt really good at was the jump handling. The new shock package with the low friction shock bodies and titanium nitride coated shafts raised the car's damping to a whole new level. The car lands very well, and I felt like I was able to recover from some jumps that I had not taken properly that would have been difficult to do with some of the other cars I've driven. Compared to the V4, the rear end of the B10R is more planted out of the box, and the car did not feel as twitchy or responsive. Of course, all this is setup and tire dependent. In fact, on the very first run, the car seemed to drive with a little understeer, especially on power and at higher speeds. And this meant I lost time at places like the large sweeper here on the left. But with that setting, it was safe and predictable to drive. A car that might not give the quicker single laps, but would be easier to run consistently. I shortened the rear camber links to reduce the rear roll, and the car immediately felt more responsive to give me the steering response I wanted. One area of the track this is evident at is the 180-degree turn after the chicane. The B10R is able to hug this corner with a controlled application of the brake, and then it squares up quickly for the first jump of the doubles immediately after. The steering feel of the B10R in its current trim is not quite as aggressive and instant as on the V4. I'm not sure if it's due to the new steering system or the no waterfall gearbox design. As mentioned, the car has a bit more of an understeer on power, but the understeer is easily managed in tight corners when the brake is applied. The steering comes in very predictably, so it steers as much as you need it to just by managing your braking. When it comes to acceleration and braking, the buggy accelerates very well and the gearbox runs nice and smooth. Particularly compared to the V4, the B10R simply feels more planted overall. And as mentioned before, I would attribute this to the new no waterfall design of the car. More on this at the end of the video, but for now, I can say that I think this design does translate to an improved performance on the track. Brake feel is positive, and that's key to consistent and quick lap times on a tight track like this, where every corner counts. Though I'm not really running with the other cars on the track, you can get some idea of the overall race pace of the B10R by observing how it runs against the other buggies. The PR buggy can certainly be competitive against the Associated, X-Ray, Schumacher and Yokomo buggies that run here. So that was some footage from last week's track test of the B10R. Let me make some final comments after my initial runs of this car. Firstly, during the running footage I mentioned the no waterfall design of this car. Most if not all two-wheel drive buggies that run a mid-motor configuration before the B10R will feature a waterfall, which is a brace of some sort that connects the top of the gearbox to the middle of the chassis. Depending on the design, this waterfall would control both torsional and longitudinal flex. In some conditions where more grip is needed, it can be helpful to increase torsional flexibility, and some racers have sometimes run the car without a waterfall just to do that. But the issue doing that is that it introduces unwanted longitudinal flex, which can cause the car to react unpredictably, especially over bumps. The B10R's new design features braces on the chassis that should maintain the longitudinal rigidity while allowing better torsional flex for more planted overall feel. Another advantage of this new design is that we can now mount a motor fan where the waterfall brace used to be, and this significantly improves cooling of the motor as you run the car. Although I didn't temp the car after runs, a simple finger test after a full run confirms that the motor is certainly running cool and is nowhere near overheating. I also wanted to mention some testing I was doing with the rear camber links. Strangely, as I mentioned before, grip levels seem to be significantly lower today compared to the few weeks before. When the grip was higher, I ran the car with shorter rear links by flipping the camber mounts 180 degrees and also adding 1 mm spaces between the mounts and the hubs. This helped reduce the rear roll that was making the car a little sluggish, especially around the large sweeper on the left side of the track. But on the day I filmed the track footage, the grip level had dropped and the car was actually feeling a little bit less predictable in the same turns. So in this run, I lengthened the rear camber links back to the stock setup, and that settled the rear right down and helped a lot. It's good to see that the car responds well to setup changes. One final word regarding durability. Now, PR cars have developed somewhat of a reputation in the local hobby scene for being very durable cars, and the B10R is certainly built to withstand the demands of racing. In one of the runs, the durability of this buggy was put to the test when it collided head-on with an X-ray buggy at full throttle down the straight. The X-ray had accidentally jumped across the track directly into my buggy's path, and the sound of the collision was so loud everybody stopped to see what had been destroyed. I'm happy to report that the B10R escaped without any damage. This car is an evolution of the S1 V4 platform and shares a number of its parts. And I've had a lot of runtime on that car, and it is certainly among the most durable cars on the market today. That takes us to the end of my first look at PR Racing's new B10R buggy. Next up, I plan to try converting this to a stadium truck using available parts from PR. If you would like to see that or want to see more videos like this, please like and subscribe. Until next time, thanks for watching.